Welcome back to Bet Haven, the safe place for safe plays. Back for the Texas Children's Houston Open in Houston, Texas this week. No recap from last week because we didn't have a video for Valspar. Listen, life has a rear naked chokehold on Chandler and I currently. So doing a solo video this week. Maybe we'll probably get him back next week for the Valero. We did have the winner at Valero last year, so I assume we'll have him next week for Valero, and then the Masters comes shortly after that. So another solo video this week, so we'll keep it short and simple. I've already got a custom model built here. Looking at the course, it's Memorial Park in Houston, a very long golf course, par 70, plays over 7,400 yards, which is similar length to what we just saw at Arnold Palmer. However, Arnold Palmer, Bay Hill is a par 72, and Memorial Park is a par 70. So extremely long golf course. You got 5 par 3s, 3 par 5s, and just a stretch of some very, very long par 4s in between. Custom model for me this week, we are going to be looking at, let's see how I have this broken down. I sometimes I get a little back and forth with my weighted strokes gained versus just straight up strokes gained. Weighted is just relative to the field, and it does include field strength, however you decide to mix it up. But right now I'm going weighted strokes gained putting. Putting very important at this venue. You got large greens, 7,000 square feet on average, which is above tour average, I believe. And you're going to see a lot of driver off the tee. Obviously it's long. It's the fairways are fairly narrow. Somewhere between 30 and 40 yards on your landing zones, but you've got pretty pretty easy rough. The rough is not very penal here. This is the second year that we've seen this tournament played in March. It used to be hosted during the fall swing in I believe November. So you got dormant rough here. It's not very penal. You're gonna see guys just grip it and rip it pretty much all tournament long. So I'm looking at bombers here. We also need to be mindful of the weather right now. I did look yesterday or maybe this morning, I believe. It looks like we've got pretty significant wind all tournament, and we've got some soft conditions potentially with some rain coming in Thursday, pre-Thursday. Maybe they're on Thursday, maybe they're Friday. I'm still monitoring that. So that's gonna kind of, I haven't made any outright bets solely because I think the weather is gonna be extremely important here. We talk about that all the time. But for me, even conditions aside, right now I've got weighted strokes gained putting. I've got strokes gained around the green last 100. So I'm increasing my baseline to 100 rounds, just because I think that around the green is something that it can come and go. For a lot of these guys, and I don't want them bleeding, consistently around the greens. But if they've got, a bad couple rounds around the greens here and there, and I don't want guys that are just all of a sudden, they got 2 or 3 rounds together where they're just gaining around the greens. That could fall off at any second. So, strokes gained around the green last 100 rounds. Driving distance, like I said, it's a long course. You want guys that are just going to pound it off the tee, especially if it's soft. They're not going to get a ton of rollout. But again, I'm not weighting any of that, too importantly at this point. I can go ahead and say that the last, several winners at this tournament have all been within, relative to this number, around, top 40 or better in driving distance on tour. And last year I did make a video. This was the first or second video I made ever last year for this tournament, and I called out Tom Hoge, who finished T12, I believe, Steven Yeager, who won the tournament, Thomas Dietrich, who finished in like a 5-way tie for second, and Johnny Vegas was a top 40 pick who finished T36. So I do remember hitting a big parlay with all 4 of those golfers to finish top 40 last year. I don't know if I had an outright on Steven Yeager. I don't believe I did. But yeah, I had some nice placement finishes in this tournament last year. Another thing that I've got going in this particular model is bonus putting. Like I said, putting is very important, but this is sort of aside from the strokes gained putting. It's putt percentage made from either 20 and beyond or 5 feet and closer. And the reason I think that could potentially work here is because, again, you've got these large greens and you've got approaches coming from long distances. That means your proximity numbers are going to be down. How often are your golfers making the long putts, and how often are they making the putts when they leave themselves, a little tester for par? That's just kind of the way that I'm viewing it, at least. And then I've got strokes gained par 3 here. Again, you got 5 par 3s here. And then I've got strokes gained on long courses. So that is my model breakdown. Like I said, I'm going to keep this pretty short. Number one golfer in this model for me is Rory McIlroy. That does not surprise me in the least. Let's see. 14th in strokes gained putting, 8th in par 3, 3rd in distance, obviously. I wonder who's second. I'm assuming Pot Gator's first, but who's going to be second in driving distance? I'll look at that. Strokes gained around the green. So that is one thing Rory talked about is his scrambling is around the green. He's worked on it and he's improved, and it's shown. 2 wins this season, obviously, in 4 starts on the PGA. So I don't know what to do with Rory here. I think I'm going to not... typically my strategy is more bets. Like last week, I had 1 DraftKings lineup, and then everything else was bets. Chandler is typically more DraftKings and fewer outrights. I think this week for me, it may be a flip. I think I may do more DraftKings solely because, I'm sure Scotty is like 3. Well, I haven't even looked at the odds, and obviously maybe it's a little bit different now that he's not winning as often, but I'm going to pull up DK here. Not my favorite book to bet on because the numbers aren't as great, but it's a good kind of baseline for us. Let's see. At the top of the board, Scotty 3.5 to 1, Rory 7 to 1. So right out the gate, not typically something that I do is bet on the heavy favorites like that. I just, you gotta risk so much to win anything worthwhile. Wyndham Clark or Aaron Rai 28 to 1, Wyndham Clark 30 to 1, JJ Spawn 30 to 1. Wow, top of the board. Again here, Tony Finau 30 to 1, Minwoo 35 to 1, and so on and so forth. I'll go ahead and rattle off. Chandler did send me his picks here. He's going with Minwoo Lee, Steven Yeager, Taylor Moore, and Pot Geeter. Driving distance is important for him around the green and putting as well. Obviously, I was on Minwoo at the Players. So I understand the pick because, what is Minwoo specialist at? He's a driver and a putter of the golf ball, struggles with the iron play. Statistically, this course does not require as strong iron play as some of the other courses. I think it ranks 43rd on tour as far as, approach being corollary to success here. So, that's a perfect stat fit for Minwoo Lee. I'll probably have him on some DraftKings stuff. 35 to 1 is a little short. I think I had him at 110 to 1 at the Players. So you're getting a significant cut in price there. So, not my favorite thing to do, to lose a bet on a guy at 110 to 1 and then immediately turn around and bet him at 35 to 1. Obviously, that could bite me here. But Pot Geeter, he's talking about a lot of people on Pot Geeter, success at the Mexico Open, success at Farmers, obviously long courses. Let's see. Trying to see if I can see. I don't see Aldrich. Oh, there he is. He's 120 to 1 on DraftKings. So book's still not quite respecting him. Maybe some of these other touts do. Going back to the model here, I'm looking at number 2 in this model is Beau Hossler. That is pretty shocking to me. Obviously a short game. Well, he's a very good putter. 67th in this field in driving distance. Strokes gained around the green last 100 rounds, he's 8th. Bonus putting, 19th. Strokes gained long course is 33rd. So, Beau's real weapon on these long courses is his short game. He's not exactly the most powerful hitter off the tee, but he typically, he's not a great iron player, honestly, but he typically can get up and down. And he's a great putter, like I said. Maverick McNeely, 3rd in the model. Harris English, 4th. Jacob Bridgman, who we've seen kind of pop up these last several tournaments. Harris English is interesting to me. I think, you're seeing some really good ball striking metrics from him the last 2 or 3 starts that he's had. Obviously, he won the Farmers long course. I could go back here. I think he talked about how, um, I want to say someone mentioned his interview about, him kind of wanting to get back into contention on a regular basis. And it was somebody from Georgia. Anyways, yeah, I'll have to see if I can dig that up and maybe post it on X or something. If you're not following there, make sure you do that. I did switch the X up because I've got a personal quote unquote. Yeah, so now the Twitter that I use to post all my plays and whatnot is at Daniel Bethaven. And then I do have the Bethaven page as well, where I'll just kind of repost my own stuff. But I want to kind of differentiate, between the solely Bethaven stuff and then kind of my own thoughts and opinions. And that I thought that was the best way to do it. Sort of creating an identity secondary to what Bethaven is on X there. So make sure you follow that at Daniel Bethaven. I'll be posting all my cards and everything there. Sixth on the model, you got Ben Griffin. Seventh, Steven Yeager. Eighth, this is one of the first times I've seen Scotty Scheffler not like 1, 2, or 3 on a model. He's eighth here. Just struggling a little bit on the par threes, the bonus putting. He's 54th. He's 110th in par three scoring. There's 5 par threes here. That's not obviously Scotty Scheffler's still number 1 player in the world, but that probably has a lot to say about his iron play currently. We've seen some pretty significant misses on a lot of approach shots in the last several tournaments for him. So maybe something to consider if you're making DraftKings teams. He is the most expensive golfer yet again on there. Next on the model, Harry Hall. Then you get down into Sungjae Im. Sungjae Im was somebody that I considered sort of in my initial thought process. He did, I think he finished high at Farmers. Let's see here. Farmers long course again. They did have weather impacts there too with the wind. He's 108th in driving distance, so obviously Sungjae's not long. But you are going to find a couple guys that are considered, the bunters or the plotters that do make it to the top here. 9,300 on DK. Yeah, finished 4th at Farmers. Maybe, I don't know. I really wanted to. In my research for Valspar, I kept coming across Sungjae's name a lot, and then I hadn't even looked at the board yet. I had fully committed to betting Sungjae Im last week at Valspar, and he wasn't in the field. So, maybe just kind of throw something out there just because he wasn't available to me last week, and I was very high on him. I don't know though. So. After that, you got Chan Kim, Vince Whaley. I'm just going to rattle out the top 20 here. Vince Whaley, Sahith Theegala, Tony Finau, Minwoo right here at 15th. Sam Stevens. I bet Sam Stevens at the Valspar at 100 to 1, I believe. The thing about Sam Stevens is he does play these long courses well. He is not the best iron player, but when you throw in wind, and that's why you saw him finish so highly at Farmers, because when you add wind, Sam Stevens is an incredible wind player, and I think that was part of the reason he kind of fell off on the weekend at Valspar. You saw the first 2 rounds kind of hold true to what the forecast was. We saw windy conditions, and I think he was sitting around maybe 2 under after Friday, which, was somewhat in the mix. And then he just kind of fell off because scoring conditions got a lot better. It was less windy. And when everybody is having to deal with wind, I want Sam Stevens. If everybody is wind free, I don't necessarily want him that much. So this is going to be one of those picks for me that's forecast based. If I do see what I think to be wind conditions all weekend long, I love Sam Stevens' chances here. And I will probably have to put another outright on him. Don't know what his odds are. I can probably find that really quick. But the next couple of guys are something that I want to talk about a little bit more. Sam Stevens. He is 80 to 1, so they've dropped his odds. And again, this is DraftKings. I guarantee you can get better numbers on 365 and or FanDuel. The next couple of guys down the list here, going to 20 here. Max Gracerman 17, Patrick Rogers, 18. I am on Patrick Rogers this week. I do like where his game has been. Plays long course as well. Again, not a great approach player, but if everybody is dealing with the same conditions where approach is not so much a factor here, give me guys like Patrick Rogers where the putting and the short game kind of specialist come into play. He is 24th in bonus putting. We saw him make a lot of putts during the Farmers or Genesis, where he contended one of the signature events recently. 19th, Mackenzie Hughes. 20, Nikolai Højgaard. And I will mention 21, 22, and 23 are JJ Spawn, Taylor Moore, and Alex Smalley. All fine plays here. For me, it's going to be Patrick Rogers. I was kind of looking. I went back and listened to my video from last year, and I implore anybody that actually has anything to do with sports betting this week, or if you're going to be doing DFS, go listen to that video, because again, I had a winner, a T2, a T12, and a T36, and 4 guys that I called out for the entire tournament. So some of the stats that I remember calling out for that: driving distance, maybe off the tee was included in that. Approaches from 150 to 175 and 175 to 200. Again, a lot of long iron play here. And then I think I did 3-putt avoidance last year, and that's sort of kind of, I think bonus putting does account for some of that, because again, the 3-putts come from guys leaving themselves 5, 6, 7 footers for par or whatever on these longer putts. But the bonus putting does kind of take into consideration some of those longer par putts that have to be made in order to kind of keep the round going. And again, the scoring here is going to be relatively low. I think Jaeger won at -12. So this is a tougher course. I think it just comes from the length and the defense of this course being a lot of wind. So that I don't think it's necessarily a hard course. I think it's just incredibly long, and the scoring is few and far between because of those two factors, the distance and the wind. I think the actual course setup itself is relatively easy. You don't have a ton of water. You don't have a ton of wind or a ton of sand. I think there's like 23 total bunkers on the course. Most of those being around the green. Not a ton of fairway bunkers. So not a lot of trouble out there. Scoring is just kind of more difficult again because of the length and the wind that can come. So again, Patrick Rogers is going to be sort of a staple play for me. I just, when his odds came out at 80 to 1, I was expecting maybe a little bit more wiggle room. And I don't know, I haven't looked at 365 or any of those odds places yet. But yeah, I'm going to probably do an each way on him. One guy I really want to talk about, and this is just me being me right now. Did I already bet him? Yeah, I did. He's 144th in this model. There's 151 players in this tournament, by the way. So that's, not exactly something you want to see. Thriston Lawrence. Thriston Lawrence is a former DP World Tour player. We've seen him play on the PGA Tour a handful of times. Yes, I did make this bet. Got his card because of his finish in the DP World Tour last year on the season. They have the top whatever players can get their card or are eligible to get their PGA Tour card on the DP World Tour. Similar to the Korn Ferry stuff. We saw him play well at the Open Championship last year, finished 4th, I believe. Hasn't really been able to find his footing on the PGA Tour, or like with these recent tournaments at least. If I pull up his finishes here, he's had 6 starts on the PGA Tour thus far. Best finish is a 54th, and that was in Puerto Rico. I kind of looked, honestly, South Africans typically play well in similar places. And when I say, so like, if you look at Congaree was the home of the Palmetto Championship in 2021, I believe. Garrick Higo won that, South African. It was also the home of the CJ Cup, South Carolina. And if you go look at the finishes there, whatever that course setup is suitable to South Africans. Obviously, it seems to be coastal, windy, and sort of dry barren type grass, in my opinion. You've got, and it depends on how soft this course plays. Now, if it does get soft, I don't mind that here for him either, because we saw some of that at the Open Championship. Typically you can get a lot of rain in those events over there in Scotland and places like that. I've got a weird feeling about Thurston Lawrence. Again, he's just had trouble finding his footing on the PGA Tour here, but I think he's a much better player than what these recent finishes are. So the bet that I've gone with is an each way, and I think we've talked about this on the show before with Chandler. So the each way is just relative to however many places you get. So for this bet in particular, I bet Thurston Lawrence at 300-1 each way 5 places. So if he doesn't finish first, but within 5 places of first, his odds will be chopped into a fourth of the 300-1. So, times 0.25. So that's 70. So then he becomes 75-1 if he finishes within any of those places. So 75-1. It doesn't, you don't have to throw a ton of money on it, especially at 300-1. So I don't expect him to win this tournament, but I think he could, finish top 10. And the top 10 odds were like 20-1. But then it's okay, if he finishes top 10, there's probably percentage-wise, statistically, he's going to finish top 5 more than half of the time. So I'm getting a 75-1 for a top 5 finish versus 20-1 for a top 10 finish. It just kind of, to me, that's why the each way does work sometimes. But yeah, that's seeing him 144th in this model. He's not super long. He is kind of a bigger guy. You would expect him to be longer, but Chris Gotterup is 142, and I've seen several people touting him at this point, so I don't feel terrible about it. But yeah, I did just want to mention him. But as far as what, the realistic stuff that I'm probably going to stick with, if weather permits, I will have the Sam Stevens in there if I think that, he's going to have the wind advantage pretty much all weekend. I don't know what to do with Tony Finau. I'm a big Tony guy, but he absolutely screwed me at the Players. I think I had a team finish like really, really high on DraftKings, and he was on it and he missed the cut. So with the 5 of 6, I was still able to get a pretty high finish, but man, he just hasn't looked right. I know we talked about the injury or the surgery that he had at the beginning of the season. I don't know if that's still affecting him or not, but anyways, most of what I'm going to have is going to be Patrick Rodgers. Thor Bjornsson's 27th on this model. I bet him last week. He opened at 250-1 on DraftKings, and he's down to like 170. If that dude if that dude wins and I'm not on him, I'm going to be so sad. So I'll probably have to throw something on Michael Thor Bjornsson. It's getting tiring at this point, but I do still believe in the talent wholeheartedly. It is more open here. I think a lot of his troubles last week came from, honestly, I don't know, because I did see some short game issue, but probably for the sake of my sanity, I will have something small on Michael Thor Bjornsson, but do not do that. If you haven't been betting Michael Thor Bjornsson, don't start now. Davis Thompson, 33 on this model. I did see some stuff about him. I do have some interest there. Yeah, I would say at the top here, I'm just going to bet guys that I've been betting all year, right? So I had Rory 100% on DraftKings during Pebble Beach. I'll probably do that again. There's not much to say about him at this point. Beau Hossler, I've had a couple outrights on Beau Hossler this year. In this model, he's second. Why not go back there? Harris English, I had a ticket on him when he won the Farmers at 110-1. Why not go back there? Jacob Bridgman, I bet at Cognizant. He finished second. Why not go back there? Ben Griffin, I bet in Mexico. He finished like third or fourth. Why not? So just guys for me this is gonna be sort of a return to previous bets here. And that just kind of brings me back to Tony Finau too, sitting here at 14th. I don't know how many bets I've had on Tony Finau this year, but it seems like a lot. Yeah, that's unfortunate. All right, so I'm just gonna stick with that. I'm gonna probably just stick with that. Give me Bo, and this is solely model based. I ended up doing more research, as I get going throughout the week. I'll probably cap it here. Give me Bo. Give me Harris English. Bridgman is tough because how much longer can he play like this? That's the real question. So give me Ben Griffin, Bo, Harris, Ben Griffin, and Finau, I guess. Favorite is Patrick Rogers, though. That's my favorite. He's 18th on this model. That's why he's being named last. But yeah, Bo, Harris English, Ben Griffin, Tony Finau, Patrick Rogers. That's it. That's the show. That's the bet. If you haven't liked the video already, make sure you do that. If you're not following, make sure you do that as well. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check out the link in the description of this video to get access to all the deposit matches and bonus bets across various sports books. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I hope we can get a winner. We've had some true heartbreak this year. Several runner-up finishes, several guys that looked like they could contend and then just fall off the face of the earth. I know Chandler had a ticket on Justin Thomas last week at the Valspar. What an absolute heartbreaker. Victor Hovland has been my favorite golfer for several years now. It's been tough to watch him struggle. And I bet him last week at the was that the Players last week? Yes. Because Chandler made fun of me on the video, and then he wins the next week. So that's just kind of like what we've been dealing with a little bit. We're just a little bit early on, guys. But I think we can get a winner here coming in the next few weeks. If it's not this week, I feel very good about Valero next week. But we will see you guys then. We appreciate you watching, and make sure you like.